Yes, welcome you all on this, I think, fourth day of consecutive webinar. And today we got two topics. First topic is by Praveen. The topic is immunofluorescence in histopathology. He will be speaking about it. Yeah, over to you, Praveen. Please start.
Thank you, ma'am. Share. Screen sharing.
Are you able to do it now?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. So today's webinar topic is immunofluorescence and its role in histopathology. So let's brief. We are covering is a brief history, principle of IF, type of IF microscope working principle, drawbacks and use of IF in histopathology. So we go for history. Sir George G. Stokes in 1852 made the first observation that the mineral fluorescence exhibit fluorescence when illuminate the ultraviolet light, and he coined the word fluorescence. Microscope was devised in the early part of 20th century, 1904, by August Polar. M. Hittinger, 1933, first to stain histological specimen with fluorescent dye. Cons et al. Through direct immunofluorescence, he stained the pneumococcal antigen. And Wheeler and Kohn, in 1954, indirect immunofluorescence, he stained herpes zoster antigen. Introduction of IF. 1 minute, sir. That screen. Techniques allowing the visualization of specific protein or antigen in the tissue section by binding a specific antibody chemically conjugate with fluorescent dye. Principle of fluorescence. Property of certain molecule of fluorophore to absorb a light at one wavelength, that is excitation wavelength, and emit at the different wavelength, that emission wavelength, with the select filter used for this purpose. So now here, energy is absorbed by atom which become excited the light. The electron jump to the high energy level, and soon the electron drop back resting stage and emit a photon that is called as fluorescence. We are using Fixative fluorescent dye, which is absorbed at 494 nanometer and emission at 518 nanometer, which observed as a green color light. We have different kind of fluorochrome which used in our different laboratory, but at presently we are using the Fixative fluorochrome. Now, immunofluorescence, labeling of antibodies with the fluorescent dye. Immunofluorescent labeling tissue sections are studied using fluorescence microscope. Now we have two types of immunofluorescence technique. One is the direct immunofluorescence technique. So once it is a one-step histological staining process for identifying in vitro antibody that are bound to the tissue antigen. Used to detect antigen in clinical specimen using specific fluorochrome labeled antibody. Second is the indirect immunofluorescence. In this, detecting circulating antibody in the patient's serum Antigen on the smear are made to react with the specific unlabeled antibody and anti-gamma globulin conjugate with the fluorescent dye. Next. That is direct and indirect immunofluorescence, direct versus indirect immunofluorescence. Time will be lesser in direct immunofluorescence, and it is a short staining procedure as compared to indirect immunofluorescence procedure. Complexity is very less in direct immunofluorescence, and complex indirect immunofluorescence, that additional step will be get involved. Sensitivity is less in direct immunofluorescence, and indirect immunofluorescence there are high amplification of the signals. Immunofluorescence microscopy. The fluorescence microscope refer to any microscope that use fluorescence to generate an image. That is the component of the fluorescence microscope. We are using light source like xenon arc lamp or mercury vapor lamp, LED and lasers, excitation filters, nichrome mirror, and emission filters. Drawback and limitations. So fluorescence photo bleaching, fluorescence form the chromophore fade with the time. So as early as possible, when we are completing the staining, we have to submit the slide to the pathologist to observe the our staining. Second drawback is autofluorescence. Some biological autofluorescence in mammalian cells play with coenzymes such like NDA, FMN, NADH, and washing with 0.1% sodium borohydrate in phosphate buffer saline prior to antibody incubation. Mercury vapor lamp and xenon arc lamp can be explosive. That is the drawback of that. So in the immunofluorescence, these immunofluorescence techniques, we can use such kind of application in our histopathology laboratory. First is renal biopsy. We can apply that immunofluorescence and renal biopsy, skin biopsy, muscles biopsy, lung biopsy, antibodies, auto antibodies in serum and other body fluids, hormones, microbiology, in flow cytometry, and fish fluorescence suit hybridization techniques also. We can use the fluorescence applications. These are the such instrument and chemical which are need to use in IF staining procedure. First is a cryostat microtome. This one is the tissue freezing media, where when the sample is came to our laboratory, we have to be cut a section in frozen microtome. So we are using that microtome, frozen microtome. Here we are using tissue freezing media, which can freeze the tissue as early as possible. We are using charge slides, charge microscopic slides, so this helps to wash out the section during the staining procedure. That is the moisture and dark chamber. We are doing IF staining in here. We need a phosphate buffer, which is 10x. That is the stock buffer. We need calibrated pipettes, measuring cylinder, that's FITC antibodies, glycerol, and microscopic cover slips. Now, immunofluorescence is histopathology. So when we are receiving the renal biopsy in our laboratory, it is unfixed. It is in normal saline, which is best for sectioning the frozen section. Unfixed tissue we froze with a brief period of time can be placed on a normal saline and phosphate buffer to transport to the lab in a sealed container. If we not have facility to cut a frozen section, so we have to be keep that renal biopsy in a transporting media that known as Michel media. So Michel fixative as used as a transporting media, which has contained an ethylamide, which anti-autolytic agent, which is prevent autolysis in the tissue. Ammonium sulfate precipitate and tissue bound immunoglobulins without losing their antigenicity. Multiple washing in PBS, phosphate vapor saline, to reverse the precipitation of immunoglobulins. So method for preparing the tissue section. So once we are receiving the renal biopsy or skin biopsy in our pathology, we first remove from the transport medium and place in the biopsy washing solution for minimum 30 minutes. Remove the excess wash solution. Then we use the chunk with the frozen media, that is OCT, optimum cutting temperature compound. And biopsy tissue should be left for minus 26 degrees Celsius for at least 30 minutes. Cut the section 3 to 5 micron. Section are checked at regularly interval for the presence of glomeruli or epidermis and dermis layer in the toluidine blue and light microscope. So we prevent it to excess cutting of that renal biopsies. Air dry for minimum 30 minutes. That slides after cutting, and after that slides are kept in aluminum foil at store minus 20 degrees Celsius until ready for staining. So then we start the immunofluorescence staining. We have to circle the section back side of slide, not on the front side of slide, because it is that ink will be get interference the antigen antibody reaction. Wash in a phosphate buffer saline if we have not used any kind of preservative. In case we have used any kind of transport media, we can first wash with 10% sucrose for 5 minutes. Renal biopsy, which is sending in the transport media. Then excess PBS, which is 10x phosphate buffer saline, whose pH is 7.2 pH and content to rest protocol in dark. Add the Fixative fluorescence isothiocyanate antibodies on the section in a dark for 30 minutes to 1 hour. Drain off the excess amount of antibody and wash the slide in 3 changes of PBS for 5 minutes each. Mount the slide using immunofluorescence compatible mounting media and observe under microscope. The immunofluorescence mounting media is known as glycerol plus PBS, which ratio is 1:1 proportion. Slide store at 4 degrees Celsius until it reveal. Antibody concentration be diluted with the PBS in a recommended dilution, which is provided by our vendor. Antibody dilution is vary in lab to lab. So we can use we can perform that immunofluorescence technique from the paraffin fixed embedded tissue also. So we have to cut that paraffin block at 3 micron section, air dry for 30 minutes at a room temperature and kept in a hot air oven for 20 minutes to start a deparaffinization techniques. With the xylene, give 2 changes, each has 10 minutes. Dehydrate the slide with absolute alcohol, give 2 changes, each has 5 minutes. Rehydrate the slides with tap water for 5 minutes. After that, rinse with Tris buffer, having pH 7.6 at 37 degrees Celsius for the 30 minutes. Add 100 microliter proteinase K on the section and kept it room temperature at 37 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes, which is used for antigen removal of or unmask the epitope of the antigen. To stop enzymatic digestion, keep the slide with trace buffer at 4 degrees Celsius for 40 minutes. After that, rinse in the PBS for 10 minutes and add Fixative conjugated antibody and incubate it in a wet chamber at 4 degrees Celsius for 30 to 60 minutes. After that, mount the slide using immunofluorescence compatible mounting media such as glycerol and PBS and observe under fluorescence microscopy. If we not observe at present, we can store it for 4 degrees Celsius until we are reviewed. Antibody concentration we diluted with PBS in recommended dilution, and this dilution is vary from lab to lab. So we are performing that is the normal IF parameter we are using in our lab, which on the renal biopsy. That is IgA, immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin M, C3C, C1Q, fibrinogen, lambda light chain, and kappa light chain, which has the different staining expression. Some are the cytoplasmic and some are the membranous. The clone is a polyclonal clone, and it is the antibodies both anti-human polyclonal antibodies. We are using from that renal biopsy, we are staining grafted renal biopsy also. C4D can be determined by IF or an ISC also. IF immunofluorescence techniques can perform on a skin biopsy also. We have done in our laboratory the routine antibody panel for immunofluorescence on skin biopsy and salt split biopsy. The routine parameters are immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin M, and C3C, and fibrinogen, which are the ratio of 1:20. At that ratio, we are dilute our antibodies. Salt split technique performing in the skin biopsy, skin IF, used to distinguish between subepidermal blistering disease with the similar direct immunofluorescence study. Incubate of normal patient skin in a 1 mole of NaCl for 48 to 72 hours, which is split the basement layer at level of the lamina lucida. Routine antibody panel for immunofluorescence on the biopsy, we have previously discussed it. Now, quality control. So, positive and negative control must be run with every staining procedure. If the results are not expected in positive and negative control, the test must be considered as an invalid and entire procedure must be cross-verified. Individual laboratory must be established their own quality control to validate their process. Now, troubleshooting. So, tissue staining is depend on the how we are handling the specimen, processing it, and staining it. That is improper sectioning. If we are not proper sectioning, we can't stain properly. Tissue handling. If we are not have proper fixative or not, if without fixative we are receiving, so as early as possible we have to be cut it. Otherwise, it's give a false result to us. If we are not properly antibody freezing and throwing, it also get effect on the staining. Washing also properly and drying the slide. Contamination with the other tissue or cell may be produce artifact antibody trapping in inaccurate result. If our microtome is not clean, so there will be a chance to be contaminated with other tissue who produce the artifact during the staining. do not allow the section to dry out during entire IF procedure. If the unusual result occur, contact the service provider. Now, what precaution will be taken? As with any product derived from biological source, proper handling do not use reagent after expiry date because it not give a proper result to us. Use protective clothing and gloves while handling the reagents. All hazardous materials should be disposed according to local, state, and federal regulation. Avoid microbial contamination of reagent as it may lead to incorrect result. All reagent and antibody should be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius in dark. Pattern of IF in renal biopsy. So these are some patterns we saw under microscope. That is the linear glomerular deposits, granular glomerular staining, cytoplasmic staining, and the membranous staining are here. Summary. It is a rapid and early diagnostic of various autoimmune disease, systematic disease, resolving diagnostic dilemma in certain renal diseases, and it is a cost limiting factor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Praveen, for an excellent talk. It was very informative and very crisp and very clear. Yes. You said we can do it on tissue section also. Can you please give me some examples at your center?
Which tissue, ma'am?
You said an paraffin embedded section also.
Right, ma'am. We can use the paraffin embedded section. So we have we have to do retrieval with the enzymatic way. That is a proteinase used in that procedure.
Okay. Then we can do with the regular procedure, like how you have told about.
Right.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Okay. Now we'll move on to the next session by Bharat. And the topic is total clinical laboratory errors, minimizing with automation. Yeah, over to you, Bharat.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think your introduction.
Today we are conducting webinars on the occasion of National Medical Laboratory Professional Weeks. Once again, I wish happy Medical Laboratory Professional Week. Today's webinar topic is total clinical laboratory errors and minimizing with automation. So myself, B. Bharat Kumar Reddy, working as a STA lab, Department of Biochemistry, ESI Super Specialty Hospital, Sanatnagar, Hyderabad. So this topic is well known, but once again we are refreshing this topic because of its importance. Now, what is the aim of a clinical laboratory? So the data provided by the medical laboratories have direct impact on patient care. And then about 70% of the clinical decisions made by the clinicians are based on the laboratory results. So the diagnosis is based on 70% of the diagnosis is based on the laboratory report. That's why our main aim is patient safety and accurate, timely report is the main aim of our clinical laboratories. And what is the objectives of today's topic? The quality laboratory services ensures accurate, precise, and timely results. And then describe the type and rates of errors in different stages of the laboratory testing process and their impact. describe how automation reduce the errors and improve the efficiency of our laboratory. This is a definition of the laboratory errors. Laboratory error as defined by the Bonin et al. Is a diagnosis that is missed, wrong, or delayed as detected by some subsequent definitive tests or findings. And then this definition has been further acknowledged and adopted by the ISO technical report 22367 as a defect occurring at any part of the laboratory cycle from ordering test to reporting, interpreting, and reacting to results. The main is the errors occurring when the patient is entry from with prescription and exit with a laboratory report. So in between, what are the errors we can find? All these are laboratory errors. And then if a brief classification of laboratory errors, these are latent errors and active errors. Coming to the latent errors, these are the errors occurring due to organizational failures, infrastructure and design, faulty policies from the management. And the active errors, the rest of all errors which are in active errors. These are classified into pre-analytical errors, analytical errors, and post-analytical errors. Coming to latent errors, these are mainly understaffing, multitasking and improper job description, and then lack of instrument interfacing, and then overloading of analyzer, and there is no backup, poor laboratory layout leading to misplacement of specimens, and poor sample labeling policy. So these all are come under latent errors. Coming to active errors and incidence, as definition as classification, the active errors are three types. These are pre-analytical errors, analytical, and post-analytical. When we see the percentage, that is incidence, here the major part is pre-analytical error, that is constitute about 46 to 68%. And then analytical errors, it constitute about 7 to 13%. And then post-analytical errors, it is 18.5 to 47%. Coming to pre-analytical errors, these are based on the insufficient sample condition, how the sample is conditioned and transported, and then incorrect sampling, incorrect identification, and sample handling and transport. All these constitute pre-analytical errors. And coming to the analytical errors, these are mainly based on the equipment malfunction and then our routine laboratory procedures. And coming to the post-analytical errors, so these post-analytical errors constitute reporting or analysis, improper data entry, and turnaround the time. This turnaround time is most important. Why? Because when we give the report after a long time, it is also considered as an error. And coming to the pre-analytical errors. So in these pre-analytical errors, it is most important. Why? Because more than 50% of the errors occurred in the pre-analytical phase. That's why we are more focused on the pre-analytical errors. So in these pre-analytical errors, the common one is inappropriate test request. So it not proper requisition. And then order entry errors, misidentification of patient, inappropriate container. This is commonly we are seeing in routine life. In appropriate container, the samples are sent in different containers. Sample collection error and inadequate transport. So transport system is also very important because most of the sensitive parameters we can transport within minutes to, and then inadequate sample and anticoagulant volume ratio. This is also very important in coagulation studies. Most of the time we are reject this sample in coagulation studies because of it is not properly taken. And then insufficient sample value. So they are requested more number of investigations and they have sent very less sample. It is also a pre-analytical error. And sorting and routing errors. And then labeling errors. So these labeling errors also constitute major part in the pre-analytical errors. So we know about that, what are the pre-analytical errors, and we can go for quality indicators. So what is mean by these quality indicators? Quality indicators is nothing but it's a checklist. We have to check each and everything, and then we can find that yes, we are in correct position or there is no errors. So this is one study conducted in that they have given percentage, how much percentage of this requisition form having this errors. For example, total number of errors are 4,719. In that, how much percentage of this requisition errors are there? Here seen medical record number, there is 0. It shows that all the requests come with proper medical record number. And then patient age is 26.9. That is 26.9% does not contain patient age. And then gender of patient, signature of the physician. I see here it is 77.5%. So the physician does not sign in the request form. And then clinical history of the patient. So it is 100%. So there is no clinical history in all receiving errors requisitions. Location of the patient. So where the patient is located, clinic or ward, which ward they have to mention. Date of order. And then what are the tests ordered? So it is 0%. Means it's showing all the requests having what test we have to perform. An appropriate and authorized request. So these are all the quality indicators. Based upon these indicators, we can say that this request is errorless or correct. And coming to the quality of sample, these are the quality indicators to check the quality of our sample. These indicators are hemolyzed specimen, icteric specimen, mislabeled specimen, and then you can see here mislabeled specimens also we have received, and then lipemic specimen, and then inadequate specimen. There is no sufficient amount of specimen is there to perform all the investigations. And then sometimes clotted samples, specimen collected at wrong time. So this is also very important. Some of the parameters we have to collect at morning and evening. For example, cortisol we have to collect at morning and evening. They have to mention it, it's a morning sample or evening sample. Test tubes broken in the centrifuge. This is also contribute 0.02%. We have to take care here also. Specimen collection with wrong test tube. So this is more frequent in our routine life. They are sent another containers. Specimen without it request. Yes, this is also we have seen sometimes. And specimen collected for unavailable test. This is also very frequently we are seeing. The test is not performed here, but they sent to perform this test. And coming to the analytical errors, these analytical errors are mainly based on the analyzers and equipments and our performing of procedures. These analytical errors include equipment malfunction, sample mix-ups, that is interference, undetected failure in quality controls, and procedure not followed. That is SOPs are not followed, then we will make an errors. So what are the quality indicators? We have to check these analytical errors. These are the various types of quality indicators we have checked. These are non-linear results released without retesting. For example, there is a non-linear result we can see, then we can perform with dilution, and then we can retesting it, and then we have to release the report. And questionable results and contradicted results also. This is also a one indicator, quality indicator. And then external quality control failure. See, 23.1% is there. The external quality control failure also is there. And then this is main important is preventive maintenance not performed. So this is very, very most important. We have to perform daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, half-yearly, and yearly preventive maintenance we have to done. And then equipment malfunction. Reference range not available in the report. That is, this is also reference range is not available. Laboratory failed to establish linearity range. And then internal quality control results failed. When this internal quality control results fail, we performing that batch and we can not identify it is out of control. Then that batch results will go wrong. This is very important. Every day we have to done internal quality check, and then only we have to release the results. Failure to perform daily IQC. This is failure to perform daily internal quality control. Working reagents prepared incorrectly. Most of the automations does not require any working reagents, but in some of the parameters we have to prepare. So we prepared correctly. And electric interruption. This is also very important. Every equipment will require proper UPS. Why? Because electric interruption will also cause error. That is 3% error is showing by failure of electric. And reagent stock out during analysis. So the stock of the reagents has washed out. And calibration fail. This is 0%. Why? Because the automated instruments, when the calibration fails, it does not perform any test. That's why it is 0%. Methods not updated upon new reagents. When we are installing new reagents, we have to upload new reagent methods. Reagents used after their expiration date. This is very important. After expiry, we don't use any reagents. These are all the analytical quality indicators. And coming to the post-analytical errors. So most of the post-analytical errors is failure in reporting, erroneous validation of analytical data, and improper data entry. So what are the quality indicators to measure these post-analytical errors? These are the various types of quality indicators to analysis of post-analytical errors. These are request released without result verification. This is 99.5%. It means the results are released without verification. Critical value not communicated immediately. So these critical values we should inform immediately, and we can maintain one critical care register as per NABH and NABL. And unrecognized test results and results related released out of turnaround time. The results are released after turnaround time is also a post-analytical error. All tests not performed as requested. Why? Because of it may be due to less sampling and inadequate sampling. We could not perform all the tests what the clinician is requested. Results printouts attached to the wrong report. So this means wrong report issuing. Leftover sample not retained as per the policy. It is very important when NABH and NABL accreditation laboratories, how to these samples, the leftover sample have to store in a proper policy. Laboratory requests with results lost. Request with incorrect unit of reporting. This is also very important. We are performing in milligrams, and we can report it as milli equivalents per liter. Like that, these also a erroring report. We have brief discussion about the analytical errors, and then what is the importance of automation to reduce or minimize these errors. You can see approximately 60% of the laboratory technologists are spending their time in the pre-analytical phase, that is assessing, sorting, decapping, centrifugation, transporting, etc. Up to 75% of the testing errors takes place during the pre-analytical phase. So all of which can lead to reporting delay and errors. So we are more concentrating on pre-analytical errors. Why? Because the most of the technologies spend their time in the pre-analytical phase. And then the aim of introducing automation in the pre-analytical phase is to prevent human errors, which is exacerbated by the fact that laboratory workers are currently handling ever-increasing workloads and alongside a reduction in the personnel leading to physical and mental exhaustion. And then these are the automation in pre-analytical phases. In the first, computerized physician order entry. At entry level, we have to computerize. So these are the details we can do this computerized physician order. These are barcoding technology, optical character recognition, magnetic strip recognition, magnetic ink character recognition, voice identification devices, and lastly, radio frequency identification, that is RFID. These are positive patient identification by these techniques like touchscreens, light pens, fingerprint identification for tablets, optical mark readers, smart cards, active tubes, that is chip integrated containers. And then automation in transport system. Here active tubes, that is chip integrated containers, and pneumatic tube systems. These pneumatic tube systems are well established in private organizations. That's why the transport time is very less. And then the introduction of robots, transportation of monitoring system. And then instrumentation. So what are the instruments used in the pre-analytical phase? These are all automated sampling devices, devices to find the vein of for sampling, tube labeler and preparer, automated specimen storer, and then automated specimen submission to laboratory, query host communication, primary tube processing, volume clotting bubbles sensors, serum indices, automated centrifugation, decapper, aliquator, barcode labeler, recapper, automated specimen storage and retrieval, and then secondary tubes sorter. These are not we are using infrequently, but that's why the errors are more in pre-analytical phase, that is 60 to 68% is there. These are the new inventories where we can use these instruments in our laboratory to reduce the pre-analytical errors. And then automation in post-analytical phase. These are informatics, that is query host communication, and automated verification system, and expert systems, delta check technology. This is nowadays we are most of the laboratories they are using delta check technology, error recording software, and process controlling software. So these are the softwares we can use to minimize post analytical phase errors. So conclusion, automation allows for taking over the bulk of many manual ordinary activities, that is specimen sorting, loading, centrifugation, decapping, aliquating, and sealing. from humans, thus minimizing substantial differences among person and from sample to sample. Overcoming challenges with staffing, fluctuations in testing volumes, improving turnover time, and reducing errors and cost, all are proven benefits that have flooded with the adoption of laboratory automation. So these are the references where we have take the values and tables.